Welcome to Vox Vomitus, also known as Word Vomit. Welcome everybody to the latest episode of Vox Vomitus. As always, I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, and From Daylight to Madness. As always, I am joined by my two beautiful Vox Vomitus Vixens, Allison Martine, author of the Bourbon books, and Trisha Mckee, author of the Beyond series. As you can see, there's something a little bit different going on today. We don't have any guests. Today, we're the party. This is our virtual quarantine book release party.
Woo! Cheers, ladies! I'm not going to actually hit this against my screen. I'll spill. That'd be bad.
I know. So cheers to us. And cheers to everybody who's watching for supporting us. Today we're going to be all talking about our latest book release. I released back in August, and Trisha and Allison have released their books in September. So we're celebrating us because we can. It's our show. And if we don't celebrate ourselves, who will?
Amen.
So,
that was very RuPaul of you, Jen, right there.
I felt a little RuPaul. I feel like because of the statement necklace, I've got
very nice.
Some more attitude today.
Yes.
So I am going to sip my bourbon in a minute, but I'm going to throw this over first to Trisha so she can sip her Red Bull and then tell us a little bit about herself and about her latest book.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I have always been writing ever since I was little, but I never used to send it out. And then, yay, there it is. And in April 2019, I decided to kind of take that leap into sending work out, and sold a lot of short stories. And I thought, okay, I'm going to give the book a try. So I had just finished Beyond the Surface. Hi, Marcy. So I was really kind of surprised at the reception of the book, and hi.
It's so exciting.
It is, yay.
Hi, Marilyn. Okay.
So, and I had a lot of people say that while they loved the book, they felt it wasn't finished, that there was more that could be said. And I thought, you know what? I think you're right. So I worked on Beyond the Dreams, and I thought, okay, it's still not finished. So Beyond the Dreams has been released, and I'm currently writing the third one. So hi.
Thank you, Lisa.
I know. I love the comments. So Trisha, did you ever think of yourself as like a writer of series, or did you always think that you would have like standalone books, or did you not know? Are you a series girl at heart?
You know what? There are a few of the books that I've written that have been series, but usually my books are like 200,000 words. So I think I'm a series girl. I just didn't know it.
We just have to get you to write them in separate installments and go, this is enough for one person, and then release that, and then let the story continue in a second book.
Yes, I would just always write for myself. So I'm like, okay, I want to put this in here, and I want to do this and this. I never thought about word count. And so it seems, yes, I seem to be a series writer.
Oh, I love that. Well, it's funny that you said that because, and we'll get to Allison in 1 second. So my book that just came out is called From Daylight to Madness. And I originally intended that to be one book, one very long book. But I kept writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And that's when I realized it wasn't one book, it was two books, because I also didn't even understand how I could describe the book, because there is like a twist at the halfway mark that now is the ending of From Daylight to Madness, but I didn't know how. Hey, Christian. So I didn't even understand like how I could have thought it was just one book when I started. Like, it was clearly always two stories. But I never thought that I would be writing a series. But now here I am writing my third book, and they all take place in the same fictional place. So not really all
Dagger
of a series,
Island.
but Dagger Island.
Yeah, there you go.
Dagger Island, the mythical, imaginary Dagger Island.
Well, and Jen, there was a conversation you had a while ago on Facebook about how long things were, and so Trisha, chime in here too. Have you, either of you, been swayed about how long the reader wants a book to be?
Well, you know, the thing is, I think I remember that conversation on Facebook when I basically like polled people. I said, how long do you want a book to be? And I was shocked with the amount of people who said they want to read a book that's 55,000 words.
And that's when you tell them,
to me, I thought,
that's a novella, guys. That's a novella. That is not.
Yeah.
That's a chapter for me.
Trisha, we're going to work on your chapter length if that's your chapter. But you're right. Maybe like of a 4-part longer book. Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of it now is because there are so many series out there, and there's a lot of self-published authors, which is absolutely amazing. They write fast and they keep the readers on their toes. So the books are a little bit shorter because you can download a book on Kindle. Oh, thank you, Marcy. So Marcy is reading my first book, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, and I am thankful. But yeah, people wanted, the overwhelming response was not what I thought it would be, which was, I want my book short and I want a new one every 2 or 3 months. And I thought, holy cow, I don't write that fast. I'll never be able to keep up with that kind of deadline. But that's when I realized I should cut my book down from being 140,000 words into being 70,000 word books. So Allison, let's have you talk a little bit about the bourbon books, so I can sip my bourbon while you talk about the bourbon.
Well, do you
books.
have the bourbon or the champagne? Which am I holding up? If you're drinking bourbon, then that's this.
I'm drinking bourbon. I have a bottle of champagne, but I thought that would make me look kind of not as classy if I was just drinking out of the bottle.
The champagne is on this one, so that's why I'm doing this today. I know, off-brand. No, I have since September, came out September 1st, which is why I named it that. No, just kidding. That's why I released it when I did. And it is a direct sequel to Dibs. So I know some people just want to read whatever the newest thing is, but this is definitely a continuation of the love story that starts in Dibs. And it, you know, both stories do have a nice happy ending. Otherwise, I couldn't call them romance. But each one has its own complete storyline, and some of the characters are the same. Some of them are new or brought to the forefront who were just minor characters before. So one is kind of how the meet cute happens, and the second, as you can probably tell, the champagne is about them getting married.
Oh, did you find? Because I know you use a lot of beta readers, and
Thank you, Christine.
I think we all love Dibs here at the party. Did you find, because you use beta readers, that there were people that were saying things like, oh my gosh, I love such and such a character, like some of your side characters, like more of, you know, more of Laurie Sunkist.
Yes, everyone wants Laurie Sunkist, and Laurie Sunkist does come back in the second book, because if they didn't, I would probably have a mutiny on my hands. But it's actually kind of funny, because when I wrote the first book, kind of like Trisha, I wasn't writing this specifically to be published. I was working on another book, my literary sci-fi, and it was only through me reading for other writers in the women's fiction and the romance genres that I was kind of inspired by Spike to write my own take on a romance, which is how I ended up with Dibs. And I didn't think about doing a sequel. So the running joke is there was an epilogue in Dibs that when I wrote the sequel, I had to pull because it was made redundant and in some places kind of untrue by things that then happened in the sequel. But I had originally planned on having the characters in Dibs, the main characters, be secondary characters for the sequel. And then when I sat down to write, that just, it couldn't happen. They weren't ready. They weren't done. Just like Trisha was saying, these characters aren't done. Oh yes, Elisa is shipping Lordy, Lori and Eddie forever. So she has, we coined that as for Lordy shippers there. But yes, they are back in the second installment of the Bourbon Book series. So book 3 is already done and is already in beta, and I'm getting feedback from the readers bit by bit on how that's going. And fingers crossed, I might have it out by Christmas, but I'm busy doing other things, so I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to bring my brain back to the bourbon books world.
Yeah. What alcohol is the 3rd book about?
Do I have to say?
No.
It's tequila.
I was going to ask. I was like, is it a margarita?
Yeah, I know. Christian earlier was asking for the cover reveal. I don't have a title, so I don't have a cover, but the cover will most likely have a good shot of tequila and like a nice lime there. And we're throwing around different titles, but some of the titles are so misleading if you don't understand what's actually happening that I couldn't do that to my readers because they would be really angry if they thought one thing was happening and it was actually something else. That's another story.
So Trisha, I just finished your book, Beyond the Dreams, and I know I kept messaging you about a few specific side characters that I was just like became weirdly obsessed with. So that I know I'm just like more Finn, more crazy Connie. Are you? Do you? And I know you probably have heard that from other people as well. Maybe not about necessarily those 2 characters, but did you find that when you were writing Beyond the Dreams that early feedback played into it, like the characters that people really wanted a little bit more of?
You know what? No, because I was writing it before I got a lot of the feedback. But I seem to know which characters stood out. And I do just want to say, you mean Beyond the Surface. That's the one you read, right? You haven't read Beyond the
sorry, that's what I meant.
Okay.
No, that's what I meant.
But you know what? It's funny because I get a lot of feedback, and it's a lot of the secondary characters. Beyond the Dream focuses, a lot of the characters come back. Of course, Ella's back, but the focus shifts to Lila. And it's funny because Connie, of course, you learn more about her and her history and how she's become the way she, why she is the way she is. And I will say in Beyond the Dreams, my beta readers, there were a couple characters that were introduced and they seem to gravitate toward these characters. And it's funny because in the 3rd one, they're brought to the forefront. So I love getting that feedback. And I love when there's a good secondary character that just really, polarizes the reader.
Yeah, I have so I have a side character in From Daylight to Madness. Her name is Agnes. She is not likable, but I heard from early reviewers, early ARC readers, and even my fiance Roman, they all said more Agnes. And I'm like, more Agnes? She's terrible. But so, and I have a lot of the 3rd book written and done, but I am in the midst of a rewrite. So it has been fun to give her, I think, a little bit more texture and like some shading. So she's not just terrible. You're supposed to hate her, but you can also, but you have to feel for her because that's a good character as a character that you hate, but you still say, oh my gosh, my heart's broken for you. So yeah, that feedback was so good because I did give her more than just being a side villain, if you will. Oh, hi, Eric. Oh, thank you, Eric.
Jealous got an Aunt Agnes. Love it.
So my Agnes is a 16 to 17-year-old girl. Oh, local slut. I'm not going to say that's what my Agnes is, but
thank you for sharing that bit, Chella.
Yeah. I'll just say that, yeah, my Agnes is not the local slut, but she also lives in a mental institution. So
it's just funny because I hear the name Agnes and I picture a nun, and Chella's like, local slut. That's mental image that she's going to get than I am. Just from the name at the start. You know how some names trigger you, and Chella's been triggered. Sorry.
Chella's been triggered. She's like, oh my gosh, my aunt's a slut. Oh, what a fabulous person.
Oh, yeah,
Hey,
slut doesn't mean horrible. It's okay.
it's not horrible. No, I don't slut shame.
Slut in a good way.
Yeah, reclaim it. I think we've all been called worse. Uh-oh, Trisha's cracking up.
Uh-oh.
That is awesome. In a good way.
So, I have some questions for you guys, and you can ask them of me if you would like, and I'll try to think of an answer. What do you think is your worst habit as a writer? Ooh, I don't even know the answer to this. Habit? Yeah, or crutch. Could we call it crutch?
Well, some of them I've had beaten out of me. So I know that a draft of my literary sci-fi, I had the word but and since in there, and I was told to go through and remove them before my agent took it on submission. So I did a word count, and that's one of the lovely things about Word is it lets you find these words. And so words that you overuse, sometimes for me, it's not even a really common word, it's an unusual word. And then when you find you're using it 5 times, it's no longer unusual and it loses the impact. So whenever I find a word, even when I like, I'll usually do the find feature and see how many times it's there. I found out a couple days ago that I was really overusing the word nonplussed, and I was using it to be the opposite of what nonplussed actually means. like the word peruse actually means the opposite of what I think most of us have been using it to mean. So I don't know how that changed in the common lexicon, that it means the opposite. To peruse is to read deeply, but usually you think of peruse to just kind of like browsing through the bookstore. No, if you're perusing the bookstore, you're reading all the books.
I like the vocabulary lesson.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Trisha, what's your bad habit? Sorry,
my bad habit, I would say if I'm unsure of a scene or I'm going somewhere I'm not sure of, not feeling confident, I end up writing in passive. And I did that when I started writing short stories, horror and sci-fi. And it's like I'll pull back, and by doing so, I write in passive, which you don't want to do in those, genres. So I have to be. Oh, thank you, Christian. Thank you. Yeah. So I have to be careful of that. And a lot of times, another bad habit, it's if I get too into writing a book, I really enter that world, and it can be draining at times because you're thinking of it and you're writing in your head, and then you're writing, and sometimes I go overboard. My friends said they can tell when I haven't had sleep because
I think we can tell when we.
Thank you. Yes, because I get kind of punchy and I get sensitive more so than I already am, and it's so, which is not good. So yeah, that's another bad habit. What about you, Jen?
I have plenty, but I think because I was a poet or am a poet or was a poet for so long, I can sometimes just get lost in the language and the metaphor and then like the rhythm of how it sounds when I say it out loud. Like I wrote almost an entire chapter, which was total word vomit, because it started with like this metaphor about a rock being thrown down a well. And then I just like vomited out all these words that ended up in the end making no sense. It was like completely like, this is useless. Nobody needs to hear about the echoing stone that just like makes a spider get scared and then something happened. Like it was just, it didn't even work. And when I was rewriting it, I was like, what the hell was I even trying to say? Like, what was my point? I was just like so enamored with the visual that I was creating that by the time I got to the end of this like diatribe, I forgot what I was trying to say. And that was very clear. But I did keep it in for like 2 full drafts of a book. But then before I finally went, you know what? This doesn't work.
Well, and I wanted to ask though, just because Jen, you're also a performer, so is reading your stuff out loud part of your natural process?
It is. And I think again, because that goes back to being a poet and being an actor, I read everything out loud. And I unfortunately, when I read out loud, when I pause as like a performer or as a character, I put a comma there. So, so then, you know, you get an editor who looks at it and there's like, what the hell is going on with, why are there like 7 commas in this sentence? And so then I go, okay, I'm going to fix it. And then I just put like an ellipsis every time I had a comma. And they're like, this is not better.
Not better. No.
That's nothing. That's not a thing.
There, woman. You're not fixing it.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, but the character, if it was an audiobook, would the narrator would stop there.
Yeah.
And but it's not an audiobook.
Yet, and which means it would be perfect to do the narration because you can give it the proper cadence and do all those pauses, whether or not there's an ellipsis or anything else there. But for the reader, they might be just falling all over all your extra punctuation marks. So thank you, editors, for saving us from ourselves.
I know. Thank you. I had a they rain commas. I had a very, very early editor who was a beta reader and an editor for Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. And the person said, stop writing how you talk. And I said, but I have to.
Look, there's a valid point with some of that, though. And I know for me, and this gets back to what you were saying about the spider and the well and the rock, I have 2 different writing styles. And the way I write the bourbon book is how I talk. And so a lot of that is very colloquial. It's very just casual. And it comes easier. I joke it's cotton candy. When I had to get my brain back into the literary sci-fi world, I started going back to the spiders and the rocks. And I'm reading some of this and going, okay, it's been so long since I've had to focus this way. Is this beautiful or is this nonsense? And I'm not sure anymore. And so I'm going to need outside opinions on some of these things to know, am I so far up this reference that no one's going to understand anything that's happening other than in my own mind? Or is it profound? And I don't know at this point. So I'm just going to keep drinking until someone takes the draft away from me.
I always say there's those moments where in the writing process where you're writing and I sit back and I think, I'm a freaking genius. I'm going to win the Bram Stoker Award. And then the next paragraph, I'm like, what are sentences?
Can I English?
Can I English now? Is teacup 1 word or 2? You know, like and then I'm just lost.
Because between Jen and I, we will combine every 2 words that are not words. Teacup, driftwood, we don't know. They're all 1 word.
Hi, Diane. That was like such a high-pitched shriek on 3 people's parts. Christian had a question.
Good question.
He said it was a good question if we had ever worked on a book together, the 3 of us, and we have not, but we have jokingly said that we could probably each write a couple different short stories about a similar subject.
Do it as an anthology, bring it out that way.
As like an anthology. Just because I think we've all been through very similar experiences. Cheers, Diane. Diane's trying to get us drunk now.
She knows how to push our buttons. They're not hard. Oh, drink. Okay.
She's like, cheers. What? I'm going to have to scream for more bourbon soon. Yeah, so we haven't worked on a book together per se, and I think, oh, you have the bottle.
My husband left the bottle with me. I'm not sure that was a good idea. But
so I have co-written with people before, and it's a very weird, intense, and beautiful process. I think our styles are. I would say our styles are so different that I don't know if they would blend cohesively. But I think our inspiration, like our core souls, the stories could blend. So, like in an anthology, it would work, or something like that. I think theme-wise, we're all around the same age. We've had a lot of startlingly similar experiences in our regular lives and also through our publishing that I think we could write a heck of an anthology.
Yep.
So that was a great question. All right. So ladies, do you have any questions or anything just to say? Nothing?
I have a question for you guys. What do you find is the hardest part of the process? You know, the beginning, the middle, the end?
I think the end, because sometimes I don't know it when I start writing. So that's a problem because I'm a pantser. And also I think because I've been writing in the horror genre, so many reviews for horror or critiques of horror, whether that's movies or anything, people say, I loved it, but the ending sucked. So I have this like lingering fear in the back of my mind that my endings aren't going to pay off, or that I will have just basically, you know, written myself so far down a rabbit hole that I won't know how to get out of it. So then I make something up. It hasn't, you know, knock on wood, happened yet. I feel like my endings for my first 2 books they make sense and they're good. Oh, what are you working on now? So I am working on the second part to my Panzer's Rock. Thank you, Patty Ann. I'm working on the second part of my 2-book series that started with From Daylight to Madness, and it's ending with a book called When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk. That'll be out at the end of November. A good portion of it, besides pretty much like the very ending, which I'm still dealing with right now, all of that is with my editor, Patty Ann, who just said Panzer's Rock, so she gets it. She knows when I'm like, Patty Ann, the ending's not done. I can't give it to you. But I know it in my head now, and a month ago I didn't.
Well, and I'll answer Trisha's question from before as far as where it's the hardest part in the process. And for me, it's usually when I'm getting near the end, because I can usually, since I'm a pantser, I never know what I'm doing when I start. And sometimes I kind of know an overview of what the story is kind of about, because I usually start with the character and then where the character takes me. But it's usually about 3/4 of the way through that there has to be a pivot. And I'm sorry, Friends fans, that I'm using that word, but yes, there has to be a pivot, some kind of shift, some kind of change. And 9 times out of the 10, I have no idea what that's going to be until it just happens. And sometimes I get stuck there waiting for it. And sometimes I feel like I'm just treading water, figuring out what it is. And I will go back and reread and revise earlier sections, because the wrong pivot won't work. So I can't just force it. I can't just push it through. I have to wait for it to organically appear. And then when it does, it's usually like, oh, well, obviously this was the thing that needed to happen, but I couldn't have told you that till that scene occurred. So what about for you, Trisha? Where does the process get most in your hair?
I'm most intimidated by the beginning, I would think. Just where do I start? Where do I, and now that I know what word count works for a book, it's like,
and it's not 200,000? What?
Because this can't go on forever now.
So, unless you're writing a soap opera, like if you were writing for like General Hospital, the story could go on for 40 years.
Like there's some fan fiction now that holds the world's record for like the world's longest book, because it's all digital, and this person just keeps adding chapter after chapter. I have not read it, but somebody somewhere is just like, their story shall never end because I shall not let it die, and they're just typing away. And you go fan fiction.
I think that's my book soulmate. Yes.
I know who it is. Like you guys can be accountability partners.
Yes,
Christian. I don't know if Christian's applauding you or chastising you. But there are a lot of
chastising. I think he's probably like, that is just a lot of words, and it is a lot of words.
It is.
But I tell you, well, and I've read certain series where it feels like the author, unlike Jen, who was still working on the book and deciding, okay, this should be 2 books. I feel like some of them just take a line in random places and say, this is where this book stops. Yeah. This is where, and there's no payoff at the end of any particular book. So you have to read the whole trilogy. Right. And I've done a lot of beta reading recently where it feels like that's where the trends are going. And I don't know if readers like that. I personally feel like if I'm getting a book, I want a stopping point and a complete story that if I walk away there, maybe there's still some things going on, but I want to feel like a complete story has been told, not just you pressed pause and you're going to have to give me some more money to get the next book. To me, that feels, I'm still mad at a particular author who did that, and I didn't know it was divided.
Is it Patrick Roth? I'm like, I shouldn't say his name. I'm like,
no,
is it?
No, it's not Patrick Rothfuss, and I did not did not do that, and I appreciated where he stopped the story, and there were logical places where it stopped. I'm totally fine with that. The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear, definitely recommend them on Audible. But no, it was one I got from the library, and I read it, and there was nothing externally that I could see that told me this was not a complete book, and it was massive to begin with. So there was no reason to think that this shouldn't have been enough. And as I got near the end, I'm going, she's not going to wrap this up. How is she going to tie all this up? And then she didn't. And so I had to go back to the library, and they didn't have the next copy, so I had to wait a while, and then I got the next one. And when she ultimately tied it up, I was underwhelmed anyway. But I had read like 1,000 pages to get to that point, so it was extra frustrating because I know I'm now the kind of person who can walk away from books, but it's still hard for me to be like, I'm invested, but I cannot give any more of my life's blood to waiting to find out what happens with these people.
I like writing the series, but I like if they stand alone. Like you can get book 2 and it's okay. You can read it and you're still going to be able to understand everything. Mm-hmm. But it's great if you can read the first one, then the second one. So I like them to stand alone so that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So I think for me, I know From Daylight to Madness does work as its own story. And I think as I've been like rereading my current work in progress, it can stand alone as well, but I don't think it would have the emotional impact.
That's exactly
like that gut punch that, because so I have two main characters, Francis and Isabel. Book 1 is mainly Isabel's story. Book 2 is Francis's story. And there's a Venn diagram where their stories overlap. But Francis's story is definitely his own. Isabel's was definitely her own. But it's that part where they overlap that is the heart of both of these books. And it's Gothic horror, so but there is a romance to it. There is a love, not a romance, a love story. I can't say romance. There's probably not a happily ever after.
We haven't finished that ending. You could always, no, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I'm like, no, I don't think I can do happily ever after.
And I think you're right about it's that emotional impact, because since the second story with the Bourbon books, Dibs could totally be standalone. If you only read Dibs, you would get a complete story and shouldn't be sad. I mean, yes, maybe you want more, but it is complete and standalone on its own. But the second story picks up after, because no love story really stops when the couple has just gotten together. That's not how life works. But you could pick up there. And it was one of those things where I went, I don't know if I should do this or not, but I gave 2 betas who had specifically not read Dibs. I gave them since September. I just wanted to know, does it work? And both of them still very much so enjoyed it. Although one of them, it was quite funny. They didn't really know how to perceive the main character male because they didn't know him already. So some of the things that are happening at the beginning, they feel out of left field if you don't already know this couple and you're not already invested in their story. But I mean, she came around. She said she really enjoyed it, but some of her thoughts about who he was and her initial impressions coming into it at the beginning of the second book and not reading the first were like, well, okay, I don't want people reading this one without it because I don't want them thinking that. But I have to accept that if the book shows up in a library or in a bookstore, someone might not be paying attention that if you open it up, it says book 2. And maybe book 1's not there and it still looks interesting. And they think, you know what, I really like Champagne. I'm getting the book. And hopefully then they will go back and read the first and see it as like a prologue or a prequel or whatever. But that emotional impact, if you're not already invested in who they are and what they mean to each other, what you're building on no foundation. So there's some recap. I had a lot of fun actually doing the recap in the second book because I was able to tell some of the same scenes, but from other points of view, which aren't always necessarily accurate, but fun. So that was really good. So hopefully all the people who had read it, and there's a gap between when they read the first one and the second one, they're getting caught up on the events. Yeah. But if they haven't read it, they still know enough that they can understand what's happening, but it still won't mean quite the same as if they've lived it with them, having read that first book.
So this is going to be my segue of segues. I have in the past accidentally read books out of order, books in series, books by, like, you know, like you just like pick something up and you're like, that sounds great. And then I go, holy crap, how is this book 3? I still understood it. And then I do go back and read from the beginning. And I believe I did this with the V.C. Andrews series, Heaven, the Castile family series. So here is my one of my segues. We're going to talk a little bit in a couple minutes about upcoming guests, but I'll just say it right now. At the end of November, the Vox Vomitus Vixens have the incredible pleasure to be interviewing V.C. Andrews, a.k.a. Andrew Niederman, a.k.a. author of all the 40 books that shaped your lives, women, and The Devil's Advocate. So he might know Keanu Reeves, who is Trisha's EV boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 6 degrees of Keanu Reeves right there.
Yes.
But we also have next week, not to like jump the gun on the V.C. Andrews, but we have Wendy Webb next week, who is the queen of, I call her Great Lakes Gothic fiction. She's fantastic. The week after, we have James Rollins. We have Nancy Bilyeu. We have Miranda O. We have a lot of amazing people. We have Mary Burton coming up and Matt Ruff from Lovecraft Country. So I know I'm not naming all of them, but we have some really incredible guests that are coming up now through the end of November. So if you're watching this right now, for us, just imagine how much fun it would be to watch us interview people that we really admire and still we're drinking. So set your reminders, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday, 3 p.m. on the Pacific Coast. Central, Christian, you'll have to pop up and say, this was 5 in Central. 5 and then there's still a mountain time?
I don't know.
Well, there's converters.
No, I'm always 3 hours behind you guys.
I know.
I'm only one I'm 3 hours behind you.
All right, we have gone a little past our normal time. Ladies, thank you for making the book launch. There is still a mountain time. Oh, Christian, thank you. I don't know. There is a mountain time. He doesn't say how many hours difference that is from either. Okay. I'm like, look, I can look it up later.
You got this.
We've got this. I'm sure there's an app. Ladies, Vox Vomitus Vixens, thank you for book launching with me. Everybody who watched today, we love all these comments. People be interacting during the show. So even when it's not just us sitting here drinking and gabbing, please ask questions for our other guests. I know they appreciate it. We appreciate it. We appreciate everyone that's been tuning in so far since the first week of July. We are the little podcast that could. So we're doing great. And oh yes, Vixens is caught on. Somebody else called us that.
Oh, it only counts when it's not us. Is that it?
I feel like it can't trend if it's only the 3 of us hashtagging it.
That's true.
Oh, hi, Jen. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
Oh, I love this.
Thank you.
So if you haven't yet, please, our websites have been scrolling down on the bottom of the screen pretty much this whole time. Oh, hi, Tammy. Thank you. Yes, Chella. That's what we're known for.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody. Check out our websites. Find our books. find out more about us if you want to benevolently stalk us online. Hey, second hashtag Vixens twice now.
I just appreciate Elisa using a hashtag because
yeah. Hashtag, I can hashtag anything.
You can hashtag it
I feel like if we get one more person to hashtag Vixens, then we're trending in our own show. We're there. Somebody Vomitus Vixens. Hashtag Vox Vomitus Vixens. Anyone? Christian?
I use it when we're on Instagram. I don't know why, but I don't really know how Instagram works either.
I just like the alliteration. So, again, thank you, everybody. Tune in next week for hashtag Vixens 3 times.